The NFL is officially starting this week, and while we are all excited about that, there are still some big-name free agents out there. Now, as I was making this video, Jadeveon Clowney signed with the Titans and Adrian Peterson signed with the Lions. There are others though, and that's what we're going to discuss in today's video, predicting where some of these free agents go and when. Now, at this point in time, with the season being so close, these guys will probably go to teams that have players go down with injury and very easily could be plug-and-play players for a few weeks while that player is recovering. We will also talk about how Clowney fits in with the Titans and how Adrian Peterson fits in with the Lions and the expectations for those two. Now, before we get started, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, as all support is very much appreciated. Now let's begin. And the first player we will discuss is Earl Thomas, who has previously played for the Seahawks and the Ravens. Now, despite his last image as a Raven was, as Twitter would say, getting sunned by Derrick Henry, he was a good player for them in 2019. Now, the Ravens are undoubtedly a top 5 team in football, and with young players like Lamar, Ronnie Stanley, and Marlon Humphrey, they didn't want to disrupt or potentially break a locker room, not that he's not a good player. The problem or thing that could go wrong for Earl is he has left 2 teams now and hasn't left either of them on good terms. His last image as a Seahawk was giving the bird to the sideline, which we know was towards the front office for not re-signing him to a long-term deal. Whether or not Earl should have been paid money by Seattle back in 2018 to give him some personal financial security is a different thing, but no matter what, that was his final moment as a Seattle Seahawk. Because of that and the fight he got in the safety with Chuck Clark at practice, I do think teams, and rightfully so, will be hesitant on signing Earl Thomas in 2020. Earl, in the early years of Seattle and the Legion of Boom, was seen as a great, hard-working, potential Hall of Fame player, and while he still has a great talent, I find it hard to believe teams would truly want to bring him in, knowing what comes along with that. If a team has a safety go down, and a big-name safety at that, like a Jamal Adams or a Minkah Fitzpatrick, or even in my team's case, a Harrison Smith, then fans will try and pressure the front office into bringing him in. Earl is still a solid talent, but at this point he is a 31-year-old safety that may or may not be a locker room cancer. My prediction for where he signs is he will sit out a lot of 2020, and that a team making a playoff push or a championship run will try and sign him and give them that extra boost down the final stretch. And next we discuss a veteran receiver who has had some troubles in Antonio Brown. Antonio is undoubtedly one of the most productive receivers of the past decade, and had a 6-year span where he hauled in nearly 700 passes, over 9,000 yards, and 67 touchdowns. The talent AB has is Hall of Fame worthy, there's no denying that, but there's also no denying how much grief and stress he can cause a team. He will also be suspended for 8 games no matter who he signs with, which will further complicate things and for teams interested in signing him. Now, I would imagine AB wouldn't want to play for a team like the Jags, who, let's be honest here, are tanking and doing everything they can to load up for their future. At this point in his career, I think AB would only want to play for a contender, like we saw him attempt last year with New England before getting released after a game. The last time he played a full season was just 2 years ago, and in 2018, he had over 100 catches, nearly 1,300 yards, and 15 touchdowns. I truly do believe if AB played in the NFL this year, he could still be one of the best receivers in the league, but will he get an opportunity is another question. I would love to see AB on the Ravens, as the connection between him and Lamar would be very fun to watch. And on top of it, the Ravens receivers aren't great. They're definitely not bad, but they're definitely not great either, so AB could walk in and be the #1 receiver, and certainly help his young cousin Marquise out in the process. Unfortunately for AB though, I think the damage he has done could very well be irreparable, and it is very possible no team wants to sign him. The dream fit would be for the Ravens, as he would get to play with Lamar, and AB certainly would love to get back at the Steelers. And this is the portion of the video where we will discuss Jadeveon Clowney's fit with the Titans. Now, this is a defense that helped them get to the AFC Championship game just a year ago, as they held the Ravens to 12 points, and of course beat New England in New England. Clowney, I'm going to be honest here, I'm not a huge fan of him, but I also can't deny he will make a solid impact on their defense and their pass rush too. I also think it's fair to say Clowney hasn't lived up to the expectations that were placed on him back in 2014, but to say he'll have 2 sacks and be a non-factor for Tennessee this year simply isn't true. Now, I will say this about this for him this year. I do think he will have a career high in sacks, as he is familiar with Houston's offense and certainly knows their tendencies. I do think he will have a revenge game against them, as aside from Laramie Tunsil, I don't think the Texans' offensive line is that good. Line Clowney up in a favorable situation on the other side of him, and he could make Deshaun Watson have a very long day. His career high sacks in a season is only 9.5, so I do think he will reach double digits for the first time in his career. And what will help Clowney is the development of defensive tackle Jeffrey Simmons. Simmons is a great player, and a defensive line with him and Clowney both healthy will cause problems for the rest of the AFC. The Titans' defense is good as a whole, and the addition of Clowney will only help them in 2020. And next we go to Detroit to discuss Adrian Peterson and his fit with the Lions. Adrian at a time was the best running back in the league and is the only running back to win the MVP award since the start of the 2007 season. However, he is very much aging, and at 35 years old is certainly a shell of his former self. Now, for his expectations in the Motor City, I certainly hope no one watching this video thinks he will make DeAndre Swift and Kerryon Johnson take a backseat to him, and that he will rush for 1,500 yards and 12 touchdowns, because that certainly won't be the case. This will be a running back by committee approach, and it certainly will be frustrating for fantasy owners as they decide who to start and who to sit with this team. AP, nor Kerryon or Swift probably won't rush for 1,000 yards individually in 2020, but there's no reason those three can't be good behind Matt Stafford, who hasn't exactly had good running backs behind him in his time with the Lions. Detroit probably won't go to the Super Bowl this year, but there's no reason they can't be thorns in a lot of teams' sides. Their running back by committee will be tough to defend, and in addition, teams will have to deal with Kenny Golladay, TJ Hawkinson, and Marvin Jones Jr. This certainly will not be an easy offense to game plan against. Adrian Peterson will only contribute to it, and statistically he probably won't be good in 2020, but he very well could have 400 to 600 yards on the ground and 4 to 5 touchdowns. And we wrap today's video up discussing defensive lineman Damon Harrison. Damon started his career back in 2012 with the Jets, then played for the Giants for a few years and was traded to the Lions. Snacks Harrison is a mauler in the middle of the defense, as he is nearly 340 pounds and is a mountain of a man. Obviously, this limits his pass rushing ability, but he is vital in terms of the run defense. There are several teams he could go to in 2020, and the one I would love to see him go to most is the Carolina Panthers. The Panthers gave up 31 rushing touchdowns last year and were the worst in the NFL in terms of rushing defense, and him going there, to be clear, wouldn't solve it, but it would at least limit giving up that many touchdowns. Not only that, but they just drafted Derrick Brown in the top 10 of the 2020 draft, and Snacks mentoring Brown would be huge for his development. The Panthers have a good young defensive core right now of Brown, Yetur Gross-Matos, and of course Brian Burns. Now they will need to replace or attempt to replace Luke Kuechly, because one person simply won't be able to do that, and that will be very tough for them to do over the next few years. Anyways, Snacks in Carolina is my dream fit, but another place I'd love to see him go is the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers are a very fun team to watch when their defense is great like it was last year, and him helping try and stop the Ravens' run game would also be very interesting to watch. And with that being said, that's all I have for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. If you ever have a video suggestion, please let me know in the comments, and I'll see you guys next time. Have a great day.